Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and today the China Rising DLC for Battlefield 4 has finally arrived, and I've gotta say that it's very interesting. There's some things that kind of took me by surprise, and so for today I'm gonna kind of explain the stuff that I've appreciated about the DLC, some stuff that I'm not really all that thrilled about, but overall just kind of giving my first impressions. And so the first thing that really took me by surprise is that 3 of the 4 maps are gigantic. Like the first time I spawned into Dragon Pass, I spawned in at the deployment in one of the main battle tanks, and it took me a solid minute to drive from deployment all the way to the first objective, like the A capture point, since I was playing Conquest. Like it's just incredible how large this map is. And what it really reminded me of is the Armored Kill DLC from Battlefield 3. And while I know a lot of people enjoyed that expansion pack, there's the select group of people that enjoy large vehicle combat. They like those very large maps. For the most part, what I remember, and this may be just selective memory, is that DLC wasn't the most popular out of the bunch for Battlefield 3, and so it took me by surprise that that's what DICE kind of modeled 3 of the 4 maps for China Rising around, like very large, very vehicle-centered maps. That isn't to say that they're bad by any means, like they're still a lot of fun to play, especially like Silk Road. I love Silk Road Conquest. I think it's like that perfect combination of both infantry and vehicle combat. But at the same time, if you were thinking kind of picking up premium so that you can jump into these maps faster, you don't have to wait, I think like it's a 2-week break or a 2-week kind of lull time in between premium and normal users, just know that these maps are very large, and if you don't really enjoy large vehicle combat, at least for Conquest, then you may want to hold off on premium. That being said though, if you do enjoy infantry-based combat, DICE still's got you covered here. Like there is that type of gameplay, but it's going to come in the form of domination and team deathmatch. And I would say 3 out of the 4 maps are fantastic for those game modes. And the one that I would kind of stray away from is Silk Road. And I know that I just said Silk Road is amazing for Conquest, and I still stand by that. For domination and team deathmatch, it's basically head glitch heaven. Like every single engagement that you get into is basically firing someone where all you can see is their head. And I don't know about you, but that gets frustrating very quickly. And there's also just an absurd amount of angles that they can shoot you from. And so if you like infantry-based combat, this DLC has you covered, but I would kind of stray away from Silk Road, unless that tickles your fancy. Unless you like that type of gameplay, you like to head glitch people, and that's what you enjoy, then, you know, go for it. But everyone else, I would kind of just avoid that one like the plague. Another thing that was kind of disappointing is that there doesn't appear to be any major Levolution moments on any of the maps. I think Silk Road may have some IEDs like they had in Golmud Railways, but there isn't going to be a skyscraper falling, there isn't going to be a tower or a dam crumbling to the ground, and while there still is like the normal destruction, so if you shoot an RPG at a wall, it's going to crumble to the ground, like that's still going to be in there, but there just doesn't appear to be any major Levolution moments. And for me personally, I just feel like this was a huge missed opportunity, and Gillen Peaks is a great example of that. If you played on it so far, or if you've seen any gameplay, or yeah, actually right now, is there's this great tunnel system where there's tunnels all over the place, and how cool it would have been if you could have brought down maybe one section or one of the tunnels that can kill the enemy, it can block one route, but also maybe open up new paths, or just something along those lines where you have more an impact on the map itself, and it's not just more like an arena. Like that's kind of the vibe that I got from DICE, is that these maps feel more alive, and that's not the vibe that I was getting with China Rising. I felt like they did a good job with a lot of the vanilla maps, but I'm just not getting that same feel for the current DLC. Another one is Silk Road. There's a lot of nice plateau areas, there's a lot of rock structures, and how cool it'd be if you could bring down some of those, you know, some of those structures. Like if a tank is on one of them and they're kind of raining death down upon one of the objectives, instead of trying to run up and trying to place C4 on it, maybe you could have placed C4 at the base of, you know, that little plateau, detonate it, and then it crumbles to the ground, bringing the tank down to a rubbly death. I don't know. It could have just been something very simple like that, but just so that we had more an influence on the map itself, I feel like it was just a pretty big missed opportunity. And then there is air superiority, and I don't know about you guys, but I think that this game mode is utter trash. Like, they tried it back in Battlefield 3, people played it for about a week or two, and then they realized that after a while, it just basically becomes lock-on city, where if you blow through your first defensive countermeasure, you're a sitting duck at that point, and so people would just kind of just fly into the ground. There was no reason for them to try to live through that firefight, because they were going to get locked on by the 7 other pilots up in the sky, and they were going to get blown into smithereens. And that's kind of the same feel that I'm getting with Battlefield 4. It might be a little bit better, and they may have done some slight improvements. I'm not a jet pilot, like I don't play that often, and so maybe if you are a jet enthusiast, this is going to be a lot of fun for you, but for the most part, I wasn't all that thrilled by it, or really all that impressed. One thing that is kind of cool, though, is that on Gillen Peaks, or I think that's on Peaks, that if you want to play as the helicopter, that is an option. And so there was a bunch of helicopters kind of flying up in the sky, but once again, I have a feeling that it's going to be just lock on central, where once you blow through your first countermeasure, all the helicopters are going to lock on and take you out, or you're just going to have you're going to see a lot of TV missiles flying all over the place as well. So if that sounds appealing to you, then go for it, but at least for me, I'm going to avoid that game mode. On the bright side, though, we do get a couple of new weapons and gadgets. So if you're someone who likes new shiny toys, then that is going to be included with China Rising. We get the L85A2 assault rifle, the MP7 personal defense weapon, the RPK-74 LMG, the L96 sniper rifle, and the MTAR carbine. As for the 2 gadgets, there is the UCAV for the support class, which is amazing at taking out camping snipers on top of rooftops, and then there is the SUAV for the recon class, which is kind of like the MAV, but it acts more like a plane. So if you are someone who likes shiny new things, you like new gadgets, you like playing around with new weapons, then that is going to be included in this DLC. So the final thing that I'm going to mention, and at the risk of sounding way too negative, I know that this has been a very negative commentary, and don't get me wrong, like I am still having fun with China Rising, but the final thing I wanted to talk about is the bomber. This is a new sort of vehicle that they've added into the game, where there is a station on the map or near one of the objectives that you can deploy into, and then once you're inside of it, you can direct a bomber to fly over and to bomb a section of the map. And that sounds kind of cool, but at least from my playtime so far, I've never been killed by it, I've never seen anyone die to the bomber, and overall it just doesn't seem to be a very effective vehicle on the map. And I realize that it's got to be just a nightmare to try to balance something like that, because you don't want it to feel overpowered, you don't want it to, you know, just be something that all of a sudden destroys everyone and that the person who dies from it gets annoyed, but at the same time, it's got to be at least somewhat effective. So at this point, it just kind of feels gimmicky. It kind of feels like something that DICE added into the game to be like, hey, this is just another cool aspect of China Rising. Like it, please like it. But as of right now, I haven't really been all that impressed. So overall, I would say at the core of these maps, they're a lot of fun. If you enjoy large vehicle-centered based combat, play on Conquest. If you enjoy domination and team deathmatch and infantry-based combat, then those game modes are going to be perfect for you. But as for all of the other things that kind of came along with the DLC, I felt like that was more hit or miss. I wasn't all that impressed by air superiority. I think it's going to be a flop in about a month or two. I'm not all that impressed by the bomber. I felt like the Levolution was a pretty big missed opportunity. And so while overall I feel like the maps are strong, I still don't think that this is the strongest DLC that has come out of DICE. But that is about it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. But before I go, let me know what you think of China Rising. Do you agree with me? Am I being a little bit too critical? Let me know down below in the comments section. But until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.